for. We welcome to the program now. It's Representative Dan Eubanks. He's in today because he's running for the United States Senate. Representative Eubanks, thanks for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gerard.
So what motivated you to jump in this race? You, of course, are challenging Mississippi Senior Senator Roger Wicker.
Oh, well, it's a long story. I don't know how much time I got.
Go ahead. Well, give us the high level.
I'll give you the high level. And it's not just me. I think pretty much all the Republicans I'm coming across as I crisscross this state nonstop, he ceased to represent them and represent the Republican conservative ideals. He's been on the opposite side of a lot of issues, even from our other senator. And, it was one of those things where you start feeling that tug. And my whole entry into public service was bathed in prayer. It was like, well, Lord, I don't know, man. And I'd fleece him, and I've seen him show up in so many big ways. I've been humbled to be a part of some really big wins for our state, for our nation. And I started feeling that again. I'm watching him voting on the, siding with the Democrats when it came to funding the Green New Deal stuff, for hundreds of millions of dollars for transgender and gender equity initiatives, and supporting, like Scott Cullum. He was blue carding Scott for the Northern District federal judge. He's a Biden pick, Soros backed judge. And if it wasn't for Cindy Hyde-Smith, he'd be one of our judges right now. And I'm just like, what is going on here? And so he ceased to represent me and most of the Republicans that I know. And so after about a year of prayer and fleecing God, and every time it'd come back, it's like, okay, maybe I didn't hear him right. Lord, let the fleece be dry and the ground be wet. let the fleece be wet and the ground be dry. It kept coming back as what I was supposed to do. And so I knew on the front side this would be a David and Goliath scenario. I mean, you don't take on a 30-year member of the swamp that's got millions upon millions of special interest dollars and know what the reality is. Most incumbents are always successful at staying in office. But the word that God gave me was, Daniel, I don't call you to be successful. I call you to be faithful. You let me worry about the outcome. And so I am trying to be faithful to what I feel I'm being called to do. And I honestly believe that this will be the most important election that you and I will have seen in our lifetime, quite possibly our nation's history. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a psychic to read the tea leaves or the writing on the wall to say, we are out of control. We've got a wide open border. And a nation is only as sovereign as its borders. We've got billions upon billions of dollars going to protect other nations' borders and leaving ours wide open. We've got debt issues that you can only kick the can so long. And usually the time horizon for most of our political ruling class in D.C. is, well, next election, it'll be somebody else's problem. We'll keep printing. And most Americans, and I know all Mississippians, they have felt what uncontrolled spending does. You're paying 30-40% more on groceries. You're paying more on everything. And when you print money like that, you devalue the dollar. When you devalue the dollar, it's a tax on the middle class. And so all of these things lined up, and it's like, for such a time as this, I would rather try and fail than to do nothing and watch it burn down and regret. And so I am stepping into the race, and I'm traveling the state, and I'm spreading the good news of, hey, I'm not a unproven quantity. Right now, I have the highest lifetime average conservative rating of anyone serving in state government in Mississippi. And I don't say that to brag. I say that to say I know what it's like to be in the trench. I know what it's like to be the lone guy on the hill charging the line when nobody's behind you. I know what it's like to be the lone red light on the board. And I want to take that same tenacity and same passion and love for my country. I want my son to grow up with what I had. I want my son's children to grow up with what I had. And I truly believe we are at a crossroads as a nation, and it's now, this year. And it matters not just who we put in the White House, but who we put in the Capitol building.
Okay, so let's talk about the border, because I'm sure you're aware that recent polls show that has been elevated to the number one issue on the minds of voters. And even in the recent primary in New Hampshire, the exit questions showed that even in New Hampshire that the border is their number one concern. What can you do just as a single U.S. senator to change that situation? The border, no doubt, is wide open. We've talked about it extensively. The president has the power right now today to reinstate some policies that at least gets it more under control than it was. One of the first things he did right after he came off the Capitol steps on Inauguration Day was sign a series of executive orders, essentially terminating and erasing and reversing all of Trump's policies. So what would you do as a senator to change that?
Absolutely. Here's the thing. A lot of people fail to realize that, when you go and represent Mississippi in that role, you have multiple responsibilities. One of them, the first and foremost one, is to represent your people and to take care of their needs and issues as it interacts with the federal government. The other is you have a bully pulpit that the rest of the nation doesn't have. You have the opportunity to go on and drive the narrative. And somebody needs to do that. But also, I will support strong border policy. I'll support President Trump, which I'm hoping will be reelected in our next president. And if you remember, the guy I'm running against, Roger Wicker, he opposed Trump when Trump tried to secure the border. Now, you see his commercials everywhere, and it's like, tough on the border, got to finish the Wall Act. And it's kind of like, well, that's about 10 million illegals too late. We've got 3 states of Mississippi worth of illegals in our country right now. And so I will absolutely support any efforts, and it's not going to be all talk. Like I said, we are only sovereign as our border, and we have a wide open border. So what does that say about our nation? And so I think that, no man has all the power to do it on their own, but they can build coalitions. They can use their position in their bully pulpit to drive narratives, and they can also be bold enough to stand and fight when others are too busy making deals and, trying to come up with a border plan that really isn't a border plan, to call it out. I mean, either of our, Cindy Hyde came out with a statement on it, but have any of them really called out the problems with this Langford bill?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Senator Wicker did make kind of a real brief statement about it. Basically said he thought it was dead, that if it comes up to the floor for a vote, it doesn't have the votes to pass. And that was after they met Monday, had a behind closed doors meeting led by Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. But that's all I've seen him say.
But he never said what he thought about it, did he?
No, and neither did Cindy Hyde Smith.
Right.
Cindy Hyde Smith, and neither of them came out and declared their opposition to the measure. There were a number of senators that did, about 20 or so, that said, this is a no-go for me. They really, as far as I can tell, never stated a position on it.
And I'm not afraid to tell you where I stand. I know people, we've lost the art of agreeing to disagree on things, and politics has gotten really ugly. And it's not just at the federal level. It happens at the state level, too.
Okay. Let's talk about, in our time remaining, let's talk about the economic matters. You mentioned the out-of-control spending. You're concerned about future generations and so forth. So you're aware we're running about a $2 trillion deficit. Have you thought about the $2 trillion in the budget that you would cut?
Well, it's funny. You and I had this conversation back in the summer when I was on your show.
You sure did. We sure did.
And, there's this mindset that, everything – okay, so you cut $1 billion here or $100 billion there. Is it really that much in the grand scheme of things?
Right.
Well, ultimately, it's the smallest leak that sinks the biggest ship. And to say, it's kind of pointless. Why even try? There's a lot of waste that goes on in government. First off, I don't think we should have sent $250 billion basically to the Ukraine.
Right.
And all of that adds up. And whether it's government waste or funding DEI initiatives or exporting all of our woke agenda to the rest of the world, there are millions upon millions of dollars behind all of that. And
I'm just trying to get to a point where we truly do end the deficit spending and start paying that on the debt. You got $2 trillion to do that. So I'm all for cutting $100 billion here and $100 billion there.
We need a balanced budget. We need to have a balanced budget amendment, and the Convention of States. That's one of the goals of that. And I think we've been on here and talked Article 5 Convention. If Congress is unwilling to regulate itself, then it's time for the people in the states to step up and say, okay, we'll do it for you. We'll propose an amendment and take it back to the people.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. I would just like to see candidates say, this is the $2 trillion I'm going to cut to balance the budget. I want a balanced budget. This is what my balanced budget would look like. So I'd like to see all the candidates that talk about that.
Absolutely.
Do that.
And I think some of that is, when you get there, you have your ideas, but once you get there, you kind of know. I could tell you where I'd cut stuff in state government.
I'm sure.
Because I'm swimming in those waters.
I get it. But it's not running a deficit. So the state's not running a deficit.
Correct.
And it's not borrowing money. but
Well,
the federal government is, and that's affecting all of our pocketbooks.
Absolutely.
So, well, best of luck to you, and appreciate you coming on, Representative Dan Eubanks, a candidate for U.S. Senate. And the primary is?
The primary is March the 12th. You can check me out at daneubanks.com. That's DANEUBANKS. I tell you exactly where I stand on the issues. If I say I stand there, I stand there. We'd love to have you on Team Eubanks.
Appreciate it. Coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth Studio.